Developers can now write code 2 times faster using an AI copilot. So what are we going to do with all this free time? Should it worry us that there's a growing wave of AI companionship during a loneliness epidemic? And can we distill a 112-page presentation on generative AI into 10 minutes or less? Maybe. Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Know-How from KnownWell, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by KnownWell CEO David DeWolf, Chief Strategy Officer Pete Buer, and Chief Product Officer Mohan Rao. We also have a discussion with Praveen Narra, CEO of Tech.us, about how he's seeing organizations use AI to unlock all kinds of opportunities in what he and others have called the fourth industrial revolution. But first, the news. Pete Buer joins us as always to break down some of the latest AI headlines and how they apply to your business. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Courtney, how are you?
Doing good. So our first story today may inspire a bit of fear. Yeah, that's right. A little uncertainty and doubt, but I think it's important to share these types of articles. So deepfake scammer walks off with 25 million in first of its kind AI heist is the headline of Ars Technica. This is a fascinating and frankly, it's a scary story. Pete, if that is your real name, are you Pete? I'm skeptical of everything now. What's the takeaway here?
Well, no news in the fact that the same technology that would be helping the good guys is enabling the bad guys at the same time. This is the way of the world, after all. The way the story went down, it was a Zoom call where an AI version of the company's CFO and some other employees instructed someone on the team to wire more than 25 million out of company accounts. Very Mission Impossible sounding, you know. It kind of feels to me that the same kind of security training that's, delivered broadly across the organization to ward off other types of cyber attacks kind of should apply here as well, right? Like, doubt everything, every request that's made of you that seems even the least bit out of the ordinary. Ask questions to make sure you're certain of the requester's identity. For leaders, make it easy to ask those kinds of questions if they're the ones making the requests. Or even put in place, elaborate two-key systems like in the old James Bond movies, where their nuclear warheads were getting armed, right? Like anytime something significant is meant to go down. So for me, the takeaway is, just the next chapter in an ongoing and never-ending story of attacks on businesses. For leaders, accept this as your reality and make your organization ready for it. I think there's a message here for the authorities too. Like, let's make the penalties for doing bad things as awful and horrible and as expensive as they could possibly be to deter at some level. And when things like this go down, let's have an early warning system in place to notify every company on the planet.
You know what I'm feeling, Pete, with this story? I'm feeling like some good old code words coming back, and my 7-year-old would be great at helping everybody come up with those. So more on that development in future episodes. All right, so the next story it's more positive. So if you were worried if this was going to take a turn, it's not. You may have seen the news that AI was used to read ancient Greek scripts that were charred after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The Nature.com article with the headline of First Passages of Rolled Up Herculean Scroll Revealed shares more of the details. Pete, really interesting story here. What's the takeaway for business leaders?
I think the takeaway from my wife would be she'd love to get her hands on this AI to decipher my handwriting. But the story is really interesting and beautiful and is the substance of a novel, perhaps. So there are these scrolls, priceless in their historical value, possibly containing the thinking of intellectuals like Epicurus and Aristotle. 280 of them were hopelessly burned to a pile of mush and can't be deciphered through any kind of physical or observational method. All of this, I guess, as the result of Mount Vesuvius's eruption. Researchers have been working on these scrolls to try to make sense of them somehow, with no luck, for about 20 years. Long story short, last March, with the help of some Silicon Valley investors, they launched a contest called the Vesuvius Challenge. And in under a year, using AI, a number of the passages had been clarified and translated. It's pretty amazing. I think the takeaway for business leaders is, as we've said before, focus AI not just on the day-to-day challenges, but at some level also on what Gartner refers to as the game-changing possibilities. So experiment on your truly hairiest problems, and maybe tap into the competitive spirit of your teams. Get a couple different folks working on the challenge at the same time, put a little something at stake, and see what you get out of the back end of a competition.
I love that. I love framing it up as kind of an experiment, a competition. There's nothing more fun than competition, at least in my book. So I love framing it up that way. And guys, for everybody listening, good news, get out those chart scrolls. Your answer is here. I know you've been storing those away. So help us here. Pete, thank you as always.
Thank you, Courtney. Love it.
It's never going to get old. I came across a great report from CB Insights recently called 2024 Generative AI Predictions. And I couldn't wait to get in front of David and Mohan to discuss. David, Mohan, hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Courtney. Hey, David.
Good. All right, so today I want to talk about a recent report from CB Insights, and I've got some takeaways from that report, and I want to throw them at you to respond. There's a lot of these state of generative AI, state of AI in business reports coming out right now. It's just interesting right now because you're getting a lot of interesting perspectives on what's happening in AI. So I've got some takeaways. I want to get your takes on this report. Okay, so the first one, big theme on, as you can guess, nobody's surprised by this, productivity. A lot about AI copilots and how they're becoming essential to a lot of different job functions. Mohan, you'll love this one. Specifically for developers, cutting down 56% of their time it takes to develop something. So I'd love to get y'all's take on where do you think we are right now on productivity and actually executing this on an individual level in business?
In software development, this is real and it's happening. In fact, in our company, we use it. GitHub Copilot is amazing. Like you said, it increased productivity by 56%. I think this was a randomized trial they had with 95 developers. So it was a fairly significant N in terms of how big it was. But we also see this much more in our daily work. One of the things, Courtney, about software development is you don't write it once. You are constantly refining it. You're refactoring it. And it's never-ending coats of polish that you got to put on in a software development cycle. And tools like the Copilot can really help you with refactoring, as well as giving you tips and tricks to make it more efficient. So we love it.
Mohan, I've got a question about that on that. One of the anecdotes that I'm hearing over and over again in software that I'm actually starting to see appear in other use cases as well is that it is the senior, most experienced folks that really know their craft well that are getting the most benefit from these tools. Whereas the more inexperienced, the more junior, the less skilled professionals aren't being able to tap them as much. Number one, do you see that trend live? And number two, do you think that's going to change over time? I'm really curious how that evolves.
I don't know if that is true. I think it's going to help both the senior and the junior developers, but it's going to help them in different ways. For the more junior developers, the go-to used to be Stack Overflow. In fact, Stack Overflow itself has now been AI enabled. So if you want to know how to get started with traversing a binary tree or whatever algorithm that you're working on, you can just get a code snippet pretty easily that you can then improvise on. Or if you have something running in one environment and you want to make it run in the other environment, and you ask generative AI how to do that, you could do that. I think for the more senior developers, it's about code reviews of other team members, as well as making them slightly more efficient. Obviously, their time and expenses are higher. So in that sense, you're right. But I think in general, this is going to make a more junior developer become into a mid, rather than the craft of what a senior developer does. Now, that's not to say that in the future, the same characterizations going to hold. It's going to help both segments as these tools get smarter and better.
So we talked about, is there an advantage for like a senior developer, above a junior level or an entry level developer? One concern that I've started to have is for executives who may not be down in the weeds as much and may not have as much opportunity to be in the weeds with some of these AI tools and just be getting their hands on it, really experiencing the power of them. You're not the execution level, your job is a lot of leadership, visionary, there's certainly probably some strategy areas, but there's not as much, you're not coding, you're not writing emails, you're not so many of the productivity areas that we've talked about, executive is just not at that level anymore. They're not at an execution level. And so how do they get in and utilize these tools and really experience the power and just understand how they work?
I think that's so smart, Courtney. You're right. The observation that executives tend to not have their hands in this as much, I think, is very true. I don't know that it should be true, though. I think it is a result of what you outlined, that they're just, by their very nature, not doing the execution work as much. But I think here's the trick for executives. Number one, I would discipline yourself to force yourself to do it. Find ways to leverage artificial intelligence tools so you become very comfortable with them. The way you do that is you look at what is the execution work that I actually do. What am I doing that I am creating something that artificial intelligence may be able to help me with? We already used the example of Grammarly and editorial on my writing. All right. Another example would be crafting a new policy or procedure. If you are creating a new standard or document or set of guidelines, something like that, if you're actually writing it, can you ask ChatGPT to write you a draft and see what it comes up with? You may be surprised that it takes you 60% of the way there, maybe even 80% of the way there. I think getting used to doing those types of things and just forcing yourself to find 2 or 3 examples a day to just try and to just do it, it takes 2 minutes to run that experiment. Right. And learn how to do the prompt engineering, learn how to do it, and see where in your day can you take advantage.
Courtney, I think you're right. In general, the tools haven't evolved as much for executive use, but you can start using the building blocks and start looking at how you spend your time, right? An executive probably spends a lot of time in meetings. Can the meetings be made more efficient? Can you write a board letter? Most CEOs write a letter to the board. Can you craft that more quickly and more succinctly? Can you synthesize the information that's coming at you better? Right? These are all the types of applications that you can start using, but these will mature very rapidly for every category of user in the future.
Okay, the next area I wanted to get y'all's take on is multimodal AI becomes table stakes.
Yeah, here's the deal. I think this is like my comment that I've made multiple times, that ChatGPT is basically a green screen, right? I do agree multimodal is communicating with artificial intelligence in ways other than just text. So yes. However, I will say, I think when most people hear the word multimodal, if they actually know what it means, I think they think, oh, my input to ChatGPT is not just text, it's also voice, it's also images, and I can, through my prompt, upload those things. And I actually think that cuts this short. I think we're going multimodal, and I don't know what the word is going to be, hypermodal, ambiguous modal. I don't know. AI has the ability to not be responsive, but proactive. It has the ability to provide proactive intelligence to us, to monitor our surroundings and tell us what we need to know, when we need to know it, before we need to know it, even when we don't know we need to know it. And I believe the ultimate mode here is going to be that. Call it what you may. Maybe we need to coin it here, but it's going to be monitoring our world and translating it for us so that input isn't even a thing anymore. I think that's where we're going.
Last note here, really quickly, and this is probably obvious, but it's interesting to see it actually reported on, is the AI age gap. And it's specifically in the consumer market, basically the comfort level interacting with AI, vastly different based on age ranges, as I'm sure you would expect. But more than 50% of Character.ai's 4 million users are under the age of 24. So again, lots of other examples and stats on this, but thoughts on this, and I would say even layered against what we talked about earlier. Usually, most of the time, executives are not in their 20s, besides as 3. And so when you layer those two things together of, maybe you're not in the age bracket that's the most comfortable, and you're not necessarily going to have the ongoing execution as an executive to get your hands on that. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this age thing, it just strikes me. I think we're going to see more and more of these, right? We saw it when we went through the digital revolution and the onset of social media. And then eventually Facebook became for moms when everybody else went to Instagram, right? Mm-hmm. There's all these types of trends. This Character AI one is one that's real, that I think there's a lot of people that just don't get it, and are struggling to embrace it. But demographics are demographics. And if folks in the early part of their life, or these, 20s, the years of the 20s, are embracing it, then I think as executives, we have to pay attention to it, because those are going to be the individuals that in the future are doing business and that are the consumers in the economy. And they're already becoming that. And they will more and more and more over the years. And so I think we've learned from recent innovations, you can't ignore them, right? You can't ignore social media because you don't get it and you don't want to share what you're doing at the grocery store today, because ultimately it's going to cascade and figure out how to settle into all demographics and become a way of life. And that generation's going to take over the work world, right? And so I think it's really important that even when you don't get things and you say, that's a stupid idea, you say, well, there's a lot of people that don't think it is. I better get into their heads and figure out what they find so interesting. And if nothing else, understand them and how they tick, even if I can never embrace it.
The loneliness epidemic is a real thing. It's pretty serious. And hopefully this does not contribute to that becoming worse. But if it is already there, and if this is helpful in some way to get through whatever phase of life, that's maybe a good thing. But in general, the societal impact of such technologies where real friendships are on the decline is a very sad thing. And this is not just about really young people, but the loneliness epidemic is serious for people above. This is a nice visual capitalist chart, if anybody wants to see, where you see who you spend time with really declines after you're 40 or 45 or something like that, right? So it's something that hopefully can help some people. But also, as a society, we need to figure out how to foster real human communications and friendships.
Well, I don't know a better way to end an episode. Thank you both for your thoughts on these insights. And have a good day, you two.
Thanks.
You too. Bye.
If you're listening to this show, I know, you're interested in unlocking the power of AI in your business. Good news. We have a brand new white paper just for you. Go to knownwell.com today to download your guide to assessing readiness for business transformation. Praveen Narra joined Pete Buer recently to talk about how his team is using AI to help companies completely reinvent their services and even their business models, and how you can do the same.
Praveen, so nice to have you on the show. Welcome.
Likewise, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with a little bit of background for listeners, please, if we could, to give some context. Tech.us. What's it important for folks who are tuning in to know about the business and how AI fits in?
Sure. So at Tech.us, we've been in business for over 23 years now, and we have successfully completed over 1,300 software projects. So what we do is we build the technology engines that run businesses. And some of the clients we work with include NBC Universal, Synopsys, Tony Robbins, and many startups and small to medium-sized businesses. And we've been doing AI for a long time now, long before AI became cool. Now, overnight, everybody seems to be an AI expert. AI became mainstream in the last 1 year, a little more than a year since the release of ChatGPT. But we've been doing AI for almost 8 years in our business. And in fact, we built an AI chatbot. Think of it like a mini ChatGPT for a well-known, well-respected multi-billion-dollar healthcare company over 5 years ago. And we built AI for dozens of other applications in healthcare, data analytics, and computer vision. As everybody probably understands now, AI is causing a seismic shift in how businesses operate. And at Tech.us, we believe that any technology, including AI, really needs to get down to the nitty-gritty of solving what business really needs, right? It's about starting with that human side of things, figuring out what are the real needs of the business, what are the challenges that they face, and what are the opportunities that exist, and evaluating where the gaps are and how AI can step in and make a real difference.
So in this episode, we're exploring the state of generative AI. And I understand that you have a unique perspective on ways that listeners could benefit from the technology that they probably never thought of. Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you think about AI, people understand that it offers a huge and potentially once in a lifetime opportunity. If someone missed out on the internet boom and mobile boom, this definitely, I believe, is an opportunity for them to get back into the game. And as Sundar Pichai rightly said, AI is the new electricity. And think of the way we are communicating right now, right? Without electricity, this computer wouldn't be there, the lights wouldn't work, the camera wouldn't work, the internet wouldn't work. And so electricity has become an essential part of our everyday lives and for the tools that we use. And AI, I believe, is going to be ingrained in our lives like that. And AI will be integrated into every business like electricity is today. And you can't really think of any business or an entrepreneur who would resist using electricity, right? If they do, they will fall behind and potentially more likely lose their business. So AI is going to be essential like that. So it's time for entrepreneurs to take advantage of AI without resisting it, right? Embrace it instead of resisting it. And I believe ChatGPT is not even like scratching the surface. There are many people who use ChatGPT and then they think, you know what, I'm using AI, it's all good. I would say don't just stop there. Using tools like that is a great start, but people need to think beyond that. Think about the electricity when electricity first came in, right? Imagine there's a town with 1,000 businesses, and imagine one business had electricity and nobody else had electricity. That would give them a competitive advantage because they'll be able to turn on the lights, extend the business hours into the night, and people would be delighted to flock in to do business with them. But once every other business also gets electricity, now it's commoditized, right? It's not a competitive advantage anymore. And people should think of ChatGPT like that. And it's already commoditized, right? Bard and Gemini are also commoditized. So the way you really reap rewards from this fourth industrial revolution powered by AI is thinking about, instead of just using ChatGPT like everybody else is doing, how can I use AI or generative AI to build something new and add more value to my customers than anybody else can, right? So going back to the electricity example, if everybody was just using electricity to turn on lights, imagine somebody figured out to solve people's real problems, like washing dishes and clothes and doing chores, by creating electric appliances like washers and dryers and dishwashers and so forth, right? Now you become a big company. Now you become the GEs of the world, Whirlpools of the world, by building a multi-billion-dollar business. And that is what is possible with artificial intelligence today. And we've seen many multi-billion-dollar businesses being born in the internet boom, and Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple, etc., became trillion-dollar businesses. And I bet that there'll be many more billion and trillion-dollar companies to be born in this era. So it's a huge opportunity, in my opinion. And I encourage everybody to embrace this AI and get on the bandwagon, not just to use AI, but to solve the real problems faced by real customers, and then using AI to take it to the next level. Yeah.
You surely have developed a robust methodology for helping companies think through strategically the best ways to apply electricity, to apply AI in the business. Without giving away secret sauce, can you give readers or listeners a feel for what that process looks like? Like, how do you get from I see electricity, I can see its benefits, to I just drove EBITDA by some significant amount by way of an application of AI that had I not thought of before, we wouldn't be where we are?
A great question. So the way to first think about, like, the low-hanging fruit is, like, think about what are the things that you do in your business on a day-to-day basis, and break them down into what are the areas where there's a lot of manual effort involved, and think about, can that be automated using technology or AI, whatever the case may be. Sometimes people just think about AI, but you need to think about other technologies as well. Sometimes an Excel spreadsheet can solve a problem that people come to us for an AI solution, right? So that's the first thing, right? What's the low-hanging fruit that you can solve first? And then I invite people to think about two ways. If you want to charge 100 times the amount of money you are charging today for your customers, right? What needs to be done in your business for customers to happily pay 100 times more money for what you do?
Nice.
And so that's one way to think about it. Now think about, if you were to offer the same service that you're offering today, but if you want to offer it at 100th of the price, what needs to be done? So when you start thinking like that, you will completely come up with unique ways of solving your customer problems than traditionally thinking about it. Like 20% growth, 30% growth is great. But when you think these extremes, you will think about new business models that you just won't think about otherwise.
So let's make it concrete, and I'll use your frame. Do you have any case studies you can share without giving away names of a successful 100x or 100th transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was mentioning, we built an AI-based chatbot for this large multi-billion-dollar healthcare company 5 years ago. But we also built AI for companies that are completely non-tech and where people would not normally think about using AI. One example that comes to my mind is a construction material recycling yard, an industry not known for high-tech innovations. The yard's business model relies on efficient throughput of trucks carrying construction material waste. So the more people, more trucks passing through the facility, the more money they would make. But they had a bottleneck. Initially, their process was heavily manual, where on-the-ground staff would physically interact with the truck drivers and gather and validate client information. A method that was both time-consuming and also prone to errors, causing delays and inefficiencies. So what we did was we developed an AI tool integrated into an iPad application to automate the whole truck verification process. So upon taking a photo of the incoming truck, the app uses AI to read the license plate, instantly verifying the client details, account status, payment methods, etc. And that enabled the company to allow more trucks to pass through the facility each day. And if you think about that, right, that kind of innovation drastically reduces the processing times and enhances operational efficiency. And these are the kind of things that the innovations that we love, the projects where technology can significantly impact a company's top line as well as the bottom line.
Praveen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Pete, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks as always for listening and watching. Don't forget to review the show. It's really helpful in getting the word out about AI know-how. Legit, seriously, it's really helpful. At the end of every show, we like to ask one of our AI friends to give us their take on the topic. Hey Gemini, welcome to the show. You're basically Bard, but with a new name, but we're not going to pick on you. This episode, we're talking about the state of generative AI in 2024. So what do you think?
It's exciting. We're churning out creative content like crazy, but it's still learning to walk before it can fly. Ethical considerations and factual grounding are next-level challenges, but I'm optimistic we'll get there together.
And now, you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week with more headlines, roundtable discussions, and interviews with AI experts.